Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're doing something really cool. We are going to treat language like a literal time machine. We'll be using it to decode hidden human history, forgotten migration patterns, and ancient conquests. And the crazy part about all of this? We're going to do it using nothing but the very words we speak every single day. We are stepping back through centuries just by opening our mouths.
There's this brilliant quote from our source material that I absolutely love, and it says, "Language is geography made audible." It perfectly anchors our entire journey today. Think about it. Just like an archaeologist digs up physical bones to understand the past, linguists dig up spoken words to uncover human history. Every single word you speak is basically a cultural fossil. It reveals a past journey, showing exactly where your ancestors came from, the massive distances they traveled, and who they bumped into over tens of thousands of years. Here's our roadmap for today's explainer. First, the global map. Second, the Indo-European mystery. Third, when languages collide. And finally, tracing local words. Let's jump right in.
Section 1, the global language map. Okay, let's look at the massive global picture first. To really understand this, we're going to use a macro to micro approach. We'll start with billions of speakers globally and eventually zoom all the way down to your local hometown. So to make sense of the roughly 7,000 distinct languages on Earth today, linguists use a nested taxonomy. They basically trace individual dialects back through groups and then branches, all the way to a single ancient language family. This taxonomy proves something incredible. Deep structural similarities between seemingly completely different languages, like English and Hindi, well, they aren't just coincidences. They are concrete evidence that both trace back to the exact same ancient root.
To grasp the sheer scale of this, take a look at the three largest language families. Indo-European alone blankets the globe with over 3 billion speakers. 3 billion! That massive spread is the result of both ancient prehistoric migrations out of Eurasia and, much later on, modern European colonialism. Right behind it is Sino-Tibetan, with 1.3 billion speakers, which is largely driven by Mandarin Chinese. And then we've got Niger-Congo, with 500 million speakers, a family which spread across sub-Saharan Africa primarily through those incredible, continent-shaping Bantu migrations over the past couple of millennia. Now, looking at the next largest families really brilliantly illustrates how these ancient maps of language travel. Afro-Asiatic and Austronesian allow us to trace some massive historical human movements. The Austronesian family is especially remarkable when you think about its geographic region. It stretches longitudinally across massive oceans, all the way from Madagascar off the coast of Africa, straight across the Indian and Pacific Oceans, all the way to Easter Island. That is the greatest longitudinal range of any language family on Earth. And the wildest part? It was achieved entirely by ancient maritime navigators, carrying their language in outrigger canoes, with absolutely zero modern technology. Section 2, the Indo-European mystery. So now that we've seen these massive global branches, let's explore one of the most contentious prehistoric mysteries in both historical linguistics and archaeology. Where did that massive Indo-European family actually begin? Linguists and archaeologists are deeply split between two fascinating competing theories here. On one side, we have Colin Renfrew's Anatolian hypothesis. This suggests the language originated with early farmers in modern-day Turkey, and it spread slowly and peacefully as the Neolithic agricultural revolution expanded outward. But on the other side is Maria Gimbutas's Kurgan hypothesis. This one argues the language was spread much faster by nomadic, horse-riding, chariot-using pastoralists from the Pontic-Caspian steppe, utilizing a hierarchical military dominance rather than just, contagious farming. If we map these two theories onto a timeline, you can see just how deeply into prehistory linguistic evidence can actually take us. I mean, we're talking way before any written records even existed. The Anatolian farming hearth pushes the origin all the way back to 8,000 BCE, while the Kurgan steppe expansion starts around 4,000 BCE. And here is why this is so fascinating today. Modern science is literally settling debates about unwritten ancient words. Recent ancient DNA research analyzing genetic markers from burial sites actually leans heavily toward the Kurgan steppe origin, at least for the European branches of the family. Section 3, when languages collide. Let's move away from those ancient historical regions for a second. What happens in the intense contact zones of more recent history? Like, what occurs when mutually unintelligible language branches are suddenly forced to interact for trade, diplomacy, or just sheer survival? Well, the first solution humans usually come up with is a lingua franca. Often born along ancient trade routes where people desperately needed a way to barter, a lingua franca is just an adopted, shared secondary language. Historically, Swahili played this exact role across the East African coast. And today, English acts as the dominant lingua franca for things like international aviation, science, and digital communication. But what happens in intense contact zones if there is no pre-existing shared lingua franca to fall back on? That is when a pidgin emerges. This is such a brilliant, simplified contact language. A really great example is Tok Pisin in Papua New Guinea. The fascinating mechanism here is that a pidgin usually draws its vocabulary from a super straight language, which is typically the dominant or colonizing power, while pulling its grammatical foundation from a substrate language, the local indigenous tongue. The key thing to remember here is that a pidgin is nobody's native tongue. It's just a highly effective, invented tool learned entirely as a second language to get a specific job done.
But here is where we see a true linguistic miracle. What happens when children are actually born into a community that relies on a pidgin to communicate? Human babies have this incredible, innate biological drive for complex language. So as they acquire this pidgin natively, their amazing brains naturally upgrade it. They automatically expand its grammar, build out its vocabulary, and increase its structural complexity, transforming that simple contact tool into a completely full, living language known as a Creole. So, the absolutely crucial point about this evolutionary path is all about respect and linguistic validity. Creoles, like Haitian Creole, which is spoken natively by nearly the entire population of Haiti, or Gullah, spoken on the Sea Islands of South Carolina and Georgia, are absolutely not broken or corrupted versions of European languages. Not at all. They are rich, complex, full natural languages born entirely from human adaptation. They've got their own deep grammatical roots, extensive literature, and profound cultural traditions. Section 4. Tracing local words. Finally, moving away from the global scale entirely, let's step down to the micro level, your own regional neighborhoods, to find the hidden history in your daily speech. Even within a single, unified language, regional variation definitely exists. Linguists track these subtle shifts by mapping invisible boundaries known as isoglosses. An isogloss marks exactly on a geographic map where specific pronunciations, distinct words, or grammar rules shift from one variation to another. And when a bunch of these invisible lines bundle together, you've officially crossed over into a completely different dialect zone. A perfect, highly relatable example of an isogloss boundary right here in the United States is the fierce, never-ending debate over carbonated beverages. Depending purely on where you geographically stand, you're either up in Northern Territory proudly asking for a pop, or you're in the Midland and Southern regions absolutely insisting on a soda or a Coke. People will fiercely defend their regional term, right? And that invisible line on the map isn't just about drinks. It is a very real geographic boundary of culture.
But you know what's even more permanent than our spoken regional dialects? Toponyms. Toponyms just means place names. Place names are incredibly durable, often the most durable artifacts left on any cultural landscape. Remember our idea of cultural fossils from the very beginning of the explainer? Toponyms are literal cultural fossils. They are absolute proof that vanished groups of people once stood exactly where you are standing right now, speaking a completely different language before history just swept them away. Just look at how local town and state names permanently stamp the map with ancient history. Give these a moment to really sink in. Over in England, any town ending in Chester or Castor, like Manchester, records the Latin word castra. That proves a Roman military camp was garrisoned right on that exact spot 2 millennia ago. In Spain, the Arabic prefix al on towns like Alcazar documents the centuries of Moorish presence. And across North America, the map is heavily covered in indigenous geography. Massachusetts meaning Great Hill, and Alaska coming from the Aleut word for the mainland. So as we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with some linguistic detective work to do in your own backyard. Look closely at the name of your hometown. Look at the rivers nearby, the streets you walk on every single day. What vanished history, what ancient language is hidden right there in the words you say without even thinking about it? The map is constantly speaking to you if you just know how to listen. Thanks for joining me on this journey, and keep exploring.